From a script originally written for Saturday Night Live comedians to a dangerous miniature airport sign filmed directly under landing planes, Bad Boys 1995 is packed with bizarre production secrets that would make even Michael Bay blush. Behind Will Smith and Martin Lawrence's explosive chemistry lies a treasure trove of improvised arguments, real bodyguards playing villains, and a historic blimp hangar that housed both Nazi airships and Cuban refugees before being spectacularly destroyed. Here are the 15 weird facts you didn't know about Bad Boys 1995. Fact 1. SNL stars were the original Bad Boys. Before Will Smith and Martin Lawrence became the iconic Miami detective duo we know today, Bad Boys was originally conceived for two completely different stars from Saturday Night Live. The script was initially written with Jon Lovitz and Dana Carvey in mind, a pairing that would have created an entirely different kind of buddy cop movie than what audiences eventually saw in 1995. The original screenplay was developed when both Lovitz and Carvey were at the height of their Saturday Night Live fame, and the project was still under Disney's umbrella rather than Columbia Pictures. According to Lovitz himself, he was genuinely excited about doing the film and saw it as a great opportunity to transition from sketch comedy to action movies. However, there was one major problem that would ultimately derail this casting choice. Producer Don Simpson, who was known throughout Hollywood for his extravagant and often wild lifestyle, decided to celebrate the upcoming movie by taking both comedians on a trip to Las Vegas. Simpson's reputation for excessive partying and unpredictable behavior was already well established in the industry, but what happened during that Vegas trip would prove to be a deal-breaker for the more reserved Dana Carvey. Simpson's notorious behavior during the Las Vegas celebration completely overwhelmed Carvey, who found the producers' wild antics too much to handle. The experience was so intense and uncomfortable for the comedian that he made the decision to pull out of the project entirely, leaving Lovitz without his intended co-star and the movie without its original leads. This unexpected departure sent the film into what Hollywood calls turnaround, meaning the project had to be completely reconsidered and restructured. The rights eventually moved from Disney to Columbia Pictures, where producers Jerry Bruckheimer and Don Simpson began looking for new stars to fill the roles. It was during this recasting process that Martin Lawrence and Will Smith were eventually chosen, creating the dynamic that would define the Bad Boys franchise for decades to come. Lovitz later described the original script as awful, suggesting that the eventual rewrite and recasting may have been a blessing in disguise for everyone involved. Fact 2. Real producer's bodyguard played a villain. One of the most unusual casting decisions in Bad Boys came about when producer Don Simpson decided to put his own personal bodyguard directly into the movie as one of the bad guys. Vic Manny, who appears on screen as one of the menacing bodyguards working for the film's main villain Fouché, wasn't an actor at all, but rather the real-life security professional who had been hired to protect Simpson during the production. Don Simpson was one of Hollywood's most successful but also most controversial producers during the 1980s and 1990s, known for creating blockbuster hits like Top Gun and Beverly Hills Cop, alongside his partner Jerry Bruckheimer. However, Simpson's lifestyle was equally famous for being excessive and often dangerous, which made personal security a genuine necessity rather than just a Hollywood luxury. This is where Vic Manny came into the picture, working as Simpson's actual bodyguard to keep the producer safe during his daily activities. The decision to cast Manny in the film speaks to the practical and sometimes impromptu nature of movie production, especially when working with a director like Michael Bay, who was known for making quick decisions and utilizing whatever resources were available to him. Rather than going through the traditional casting process to find another actor to play a bodyguard, Simpson and the production team simply decided to use someone who was already on set and actually knew how to handle himself in threatening situations. This type of casting choice reflects the authentic approach that Bad Boys took in many areas of its production. Manny's presence in the film adds a layer of genuine intimidation that might have been harder to achieve with a traditional actor, since he brought real experience in personal protection and security work to his role as one of Fouché's enforcers. The fact that he was literally protecting the producer during the day and then appearing as a villain in scenes filmed during the same production period creates an interesting behind-the-scenes dynamic that audiences would never have suspected while watching the finished movie. Fact 3. The historic hangar's explosive Hollywood ending. The massive hangar that explodes in spectacular fashion during Bad Boys' climactic final scene wasn't just any ordinary building, but rather a piece of genuine aviation history that had been standing at Opa-locka Airport for over 60 years before Michael Bay decided to blow it up for the movie. This historic structure was originally erected in 1929, specifically to house the famous Goodyear blimp during its winter operations in Miami, making it one of the oldest aviation facilities in South Florida. The hangar's remarkable history began when the city of Miami purchased a World War I surplus blimp hangar that had been located in Key West and had it completely dismantled, transported north on the Overseas Railroad, and then reassembled at the Opa-locka location. This wasn't just any random aviation building, but a facility that had played host to some of the most famous aircraft in history, including legendary airships that represented both American innovation and international aviation achievements. During its decades of operation, the hangar welcomed the German Graf Zeppelin, one of the most famous passenger airships of the early 20th century, as well as the U.S. Navy airships Akron and Macon, which were massive military vessels that represented the height of American lighter-than-air technology. These visits were well-publicized events that drew crowds of spectators who came to witness these engineering marvels up close. The building had also served multiple purposes throughout its long life, including being used to process and house Cuban refugees during the Mariel boat lift in 1980, and even serving as a workspace for the famous artist Christo when he came to Miami in 1983 to create his Surrounded Islands art project in Biscayne Bay. By the time Bad Boys was filmed in 1994, the hangar had sadly fallen into a state of deterioration, which made it an ideal candidate for the dramatic destruction that the movie required. The explosion marked the end of a structure that had witnessed nearly 7 decades of aviation history, from the golden age of airships through the modern era of filmmaking. Fact 4. Michael Bay used his personal Porsche, the sleek black 1994 Porsche 911 Turbo, that became one of the most memorable cars in action movie history, wasn't rented from a specialty vehicle company or borrowed from Porsche for promotional purposes, but was actually Michael Bay's own personal car that he decided to use in his directorial debut. This decision reveals just how much of himself Bay was willing to put into Bad Boys, literally driving his own prized possession into the high-octane world of Miami police work and dangerous car chases. Bay's choice to use his personal vehicle demonstrates the kind of hands-on, resourceful approach that characterized the entire Bad Boys production, which was made on a relatively modest budget of $17 million. Rather than spending additional money on securing the perfect hero car for Will Smith's character Mike Lowry, Bay simply looked in his own garage and found exactly what the movie needed. The Porsche 911 Turbo 3.6 was already the perfect representation of Lowry's wealthy playboy lifestyle, and Bay's personal attachment to the car likely helped him capture the vehicle in the most flattering and exciting ways possible during filming. The decision also meant that Bay had complete control over how his car was used during production, ensuring that it would be treated with the respect and care that only an owner could provide. This personal investment in the vehicle shows up on screen in the way the Porsche is filmed, with Bay clearly understanding every angle and curve of the car since he had been driving it in real life. The director's intimate knowledge of how the vehicle handled and performed undoubtedly contributed to the authentic and thrilling car sequences that helped make Bad Boys such a memorable action film. The Porsche became so iconic after the movie's success that it essentially launched a tradition for the Bad Boys franchise, with Porsche vehicles appearing in subsequent films in the series. Bay's willingness to risk his own expensive sports car in the service of his movie demonstrates the kind of commitment and passion that first-time directors often bring to their projects when they're determined to make mark in Hollywood. Fact 5. Dangerous miniature Miami sign stunt. One of the most impressive shots in Bad Boys shows what appears to be a large Miami airport sign with massive commercial aircraft soaring overhead. But this dramatic moment was actually created using a 3-foot miniature sign and an extremely dangerous filming technique that put Michael Bay and his camera crew directly in harm's way. The Miami sign that audiences see in the movie doesn't actually exist at any real airport, making this entire sequence a brilliant piece of movie magic that required both creativity and considerable risk-taking to achieve. Bay's approach to creating this shot demonstrates the kind of bold filmmaking decisions that would later become his trademark throughout his career. Rather than using safe studio techniques or digital effects, which were much more limited in 1994, Bay decided to position his camera and the miniature sign directly underneath the flight path of real commercial aircraft that were actively taking off and landing at Miami International Airport. This meant that genuine full-sized passenger jets were roaring overhead at low altitude while the film crew worked below. The technique involved shooting the small 3-foot sign from an extremely low angle, which created the optical illusion that it was a much larger airport sign when combined with the real aircraft passing overhead. The dangerous part of this setup was that Bay and his crew had to position themselves in areas where commercial aviation was actually occurring, putting them at genuine risk from the powerful jet engines and massive aircraft operating just above their heads. When Bay's own crew members questioned the safety and practicality of this approach, the first-time director famously justified the risky shot by declaring that it's going to be bitching, showing his determination to create memorable visuals regardless of the potential dangers involved. This willingness to put himself and his equipment in potentially hazardous situations for the sake of getting the perfect shot reflects the kind of fearless approach that Bay brought to his directorial debut, and it certainly paid off in creating one of the movie's most striking visual moments that audiences still remember decades later. Fact 6. Téa Leoni hospitalized by AK-47 prop. Actress Téa Leoni experienced one of the most serious injuries during the production of Bad Boys when she was accidentally struck under the jaw by an AK-47 prop weapon and knocked completely unconscious, requiring immediate hospitalization. The incident occurred during filming of one of the movie's intense action sequences when Martin Lawrence's stunt double was handling the prop rifle and accidentally made contact with Leoni's face in a way that caused severe trauma. The impact from the prop weapon was so forceful that it caused Leoni's legs to go completely over her head as she fell backward, creating a dangerous situation where she landed flat on her back after being airborne. According to Leoni herself, the blow to her jaw was severe enough that she lost consciousness and had no memory of what happened immediately after the impact, indicating she had suffered a significant head injury that required professional medical attention. The accident happened because Leoni was not positioned on her proper mark during the filming of the stunt sequence, which meant she was standing in a location where the stunt performer didn't expect her to be when he moved with the prop weapon. This kind of miscommunication during action sequences can be extremely dangerous, as stunt performers and actors rely on precise positioning and timing to ensure everyone's safety during complex scenes involving weapons and physical action. Michael Bay reportedly became very upset and concerned when he realized what had happened to his lead actress, understanding that the injury could have been much more serious than it turned out to be. Leoni later described the entire experience of filming Bad Boys as being particularly challenging physically, comparing herself to a rag doll being thrown around during the action-packed production. She mentioned that while being thrown through a plate glass window during another stunt wasn't too difficult to handle, the unexpected blow from the AK-47 prop was what ultimately sent her to the hospital and created the most serious safety concern during the entire production period. Fact 7. The 727 jet's colorful past. The Boeing 727 aircraft that gets spectacularly destroyed in Bad Boys' climactic explosion had a fascinating history long before it became a Hollywood prop, having originally been built in 1968 with the registration number N408BN and serving for years as one of the most artistically distinctive passenger jets ever to fly commercial routes. This particular aircraft had spent a significant portion of its flying career with Braniff International Airways, where it became famous for wearing one of the most unique and eye-catching paint schemes in aviation history. During its time with Braniff, this 727 was painted in Alexander Calder's renowned flying colors of the United States livery, which was part of an ambitious artistic collaboration between the airline and the famous American sculptor and painter. Calder, who was best known for creating mobile sculptures and bold abstract artwork, designed a series of vibrant and distinctive paint schemes for Braniff's aircraft fleet during the 1970s as part of the airline's effort to make flying a more colorful and artistic experience for passengers. The flying colors of the United States design featured Calder's signature bold use of primary colors and abstract shapes, transforming what would normally be a standard commercial aircraft into a flying piece of art that could be spotted from miles away. This particular livery was considered one of the most striking examples of Calder's aviation artwork, making the aircraft something of a celebrity in the aviation world and a favorite subject for airplane enthusiasts and photographers. By the time Bad Boys was in production, the aircraft had been sold by Braniff to International Air Leases and eventually purchased by Columbia Pictures specifically for the purpose of being destroyed in the movie. The production team had the historic aircraft painted completely white to fit the needs of the film, covering up Calder's original artistic design before positioning it at Miami Opa-locka Executive Airport for the explosive finale. The destruction of this aircraft meant that one of the most visually distinctive commercial jets in aviation history met its end in a spectacular Hollywood explosion, bringing a unique piece of flying art history to a dramatic close. Fact 8. Michael Bay paid for the final scene. Michael Bay's commitment to making Bad Boys the best possible movie went far beyond what most first-time directors would be willing to sacrifice, as demonstrated when he paid $25,000 out of his own pocket to fund the climactic action sequence after the studio refused to provide additional money for reshoots. This personal financial investment represented exactly 1/4 of Bay's total directing fee for the entire movie, showing just how much he was willing to risk his own earnings to ensure that Bad Boys would have the explosive finale he envisioned. The situation arose when Bay and the production team realized that the original version of the final scene wasn't meeting the standards they had set for the rest of the movie. But Columbia Pictures had already determined that the budget had been exhausted and no additional funds would be made available for reshooting or improving the sequence. This put Bay in an extremely difficult position as a new director, since he could either accept the version they had already filmed or find a way to pay for improvements himself. Rather than compromise on his vision for how Bad Boys should end, Bay made the remarkable decision to use his own money to fund the additional filming needed to create the spectacular airport sequence that audiences ultimately saw in theaters. This meant that Bay was essentially working for free during the reshoot period, since the $25,000 he spent represented a significant portion of what he was earning for directing his first major Hollywood film. The financial sacrifice demonstrates the level of passion and dedication that Bay brought to Bad Boys, treating it not just as a job, but as a personal project that needed to meet his own high standards, regardless of studio limitations. This willingness to invest his own money in the movie's success also reflects the kind of hands-on approach that characterized the entire production, where creative decisions were often made based on what would serve the story best rather than what would be most cost-effective for the studio. The investment paid off significantly when Bad Boys became a major box office success, launching Bay's career and establishing the foundation for a franchise that would eventually generate over $1 billion worldwide. Fact 9. Secret argument instigation for realism. Michael Bay employed a sneaky psychological trick during the filming of Bad Boys by secretly instructing Will Smith to call Martin Lawrence offensive names during their car scene, deliberately creating genuine tension between the two actors to capture more authentic reactions on camera. This behind-the-scenes manipulation was part of Bay's strategy to get the most natural and believable performances from his leads, even if it meant temporarily making one of his stars genuinely angry with the other. The specific incident occurred during the filming of a crucial car scene, where the two detectives are driving together and engaging in their characteristic banter. Bay privately told Smith to use particular offensive language toward Lawrence, without warning Lawrence that this was going to happen, ensuring that Lawrence's reaction would be completely genuine and unscripted. The plan worked exactly as Bay intended, with Lawrence becoming visibly upset and frustrated with Smith's unexpected verbal attacks. Lawrence's genuine anger at being called these names translated into real emotion on screen, but it also created actual tension between the actors that extended beyond the scene they were filming. According to reports from the set, Lawrence told Bay that he wanted to punch Smith after being subjected to the offensive language, showing just how effectively the director's psychological manipulation had worked to generate authentic reactions. This deliberate provocation led directly to one of the most memorable improvised moments in the entire movie, when the two actors began spontaneously creating the "two bitches in the sea" dialogue that appears in the final film. The heated exchange that followed Lawrence's genuine anger transformed into an improvised back and forth that captured the kind of natural chemistry and conflict that made their partnership so compelling to watch. Bay continued to use this technique of secretly encouraging one actor to provoke another throughout the production, recognizing that genuine emotional reactions often created better performances than carefully scripted dialogue. This approach reflects the improvisational nature that characterized much of Bad Boys' production, where some of the most memorable moments came from real interactions between the actors, rather than what had been written on the page. Fact 10. French license plate mystery. Mike Lowry's iconic black Porsche in Bad Boys features one of the most puzzling automotive details in the entire movie, with the front of the car displaying a pre-1993 French license plate bearing the number 75, which specifically indicates that the vehicle was registered in Paris, while the back of the same car carries a standard Florida registration plate. This unusual combination of license plates from two different countries on the same vehicle has confused eagle-eyed viewers for decades and sparked numerous theories about whether it was an intentional choice or simply an oversight during production. The French plate 75 designation is particularly significant because it represents the postal code for Paris, making it clear that this wasn't just any random European plate, but one that specifically indicated registration in France's capital city. The pre-1993 dating is important because French license plate formats changed after that year, meaning this particular plate represented an older style of French vehicle registration that would have been recognizable to anyone familiar with European automotive regulations. The presence of this French plate creates an interesting backstory question about Mike Lowry's character that is never addressed in the movie itself. Given that Lowry is portrayed as a wealthy Miami detective with expensive tastes and international connections, the French plate could suggest that he had either purchased the car in Europe, had it imported from France, or was simply displaying the foreign plate as a status symbol or conversation piece. However, the more practical explanation for this license plate mystery lies in Florida's vehicle registration laws, which do not require cars to display front license plates. This regulatory difference allows Florida car owners to mount decorative, novelty, or foreign plates on the front of their vehicles while maintaining their official state registration plate on the rear. This practice is common among car enthusiasts and collectors who want to personalize their vehicles or display plates that have special meaning to them, making Mike's French plate a perfectly legal automotive accessory that adds an element of international sophistication to his already impressive sports car. Fact 11. The rare 4-barrel COP .357 gun. The distinctive 4-barrel pistol that villain Fouché dramatically pulls out just before being killed by Mike Lowry in the climactic scene is actually an extremely rare and unusual firearm known as the COP .357, which was already considered a collector's item by the time Bad Boys was filmed, and is no longer manufactured today. This weapon choice demonstrates the attention to detail that the props department brought to the movie, selecting a genuinely unique and threatening-looking firearm that would stand out during the final confrontation between hero and villain. The COP-357 gets its name from the fact that it was originally designed for law enforcement use, with COP standing for Compact Off-Duty Police, though the weapon never gained widespread acceptance among actual police departments due to its unusual design and limited practical applications. The pistol's most distinctive feature is its 4 separate barrels arranged in a square configuration, allowing it to fire 4 rounds of .357 Magnum ammunition without reloading, making it an extremely powerful but also extremely bulky and difficult-to-handle weapon. This particular firearm was manufactured for only a brief period during the 1980s and early 1990s by a small American company, and production numbers were always very limited, due to the specialized nature of the weapon and its high manufacturing costs. The gun's unusual appearance made it popular among collectors and firearms enthusiasts who were drawn to its distinctive 4-barrel design, but its practical limitations meant that it never achieved commercial success in the broader market. The decision to arm Fouché with this rare and visually striking weapon adds an extra layer of menace to the character's final moments, since the 4-barrel design makes the pistol look particularly threatening and unusual compared to standard handguns that audiences would be more familiar with. The fact that this weapon is no longer in production makes Fouché's COP 357 something of a historical artifact within the movie, representing a unique piece of firearms design that briefly existed during the era when Bad Boys was made but has since disappeared from the manufacturing world entirely. Fact 12. 12 F-bombs in 30 seconds. The opening carjacking scene in Bad Boys originally featured an incredibly intense barrage of 18 F-bombs delivered in rapid succession during just 30 seconds of screen time, but this number was ultimately reduced to 12 after Michael Bay made the decision to screen an early cut of the film for his mother, Harriet, who expressed concern about the excessive profanity. This maternal intervention demonstrates how even the most action-oriented directors sometimes turn to family members for perspective on whether their creative choices might be going too far. Bay's decision to show the film to his mother reflects the kind of personal approach he brought to his directorial debut, seeking input from someone whose opinion he trusted and valued, even though she wasn't part of the Hollywood filmmaking process. Harriet Bay's reaction to the opening scene's language density was strong enough to convince her son that the profanity level was excessive and might alienate audiences who weren't prepared for such an immediate assault of strong language right from the movie's first moments. The original 18 F-bombs in 30 seconds would have represented an almost unprecedented level of profanity concentration for a mainstream action movie in 1995, averaging out to more than 1 F-bomb every 2 seconds during the carjacking sequence. This intensity of language was part of Bay's attempt to create an authentic street-level feel for the Miami setting and the criminal characters who were threatening the 2 detectives, but his mother's feedback helped him realize that the effect might be overwhelming rather than authentic. The reduction to 12 F-bombs still maintained the gritty and realistic tone that Bay was seeking, while making the scene more palatable for general audiences who might be shocked by the original version's language density. This change demonstrates how even small adjustments in editing can significantly impact a movie's tone and accessibility. And it shows that Bay was willing to listen to feedback and modify his vision when presented with a compelling argument about audience reception, even when that argument came from his own family, rather than studio executives or test audiences. Fact 13. The movie was double-dubbed in Spanish. Bad Boys underwent an unusual dubbing process for its Latin American Spanish release, with the entire movie being dubbed not once but twice by 2 completely different studios, creating 2 distinct Spanish-language versions that were distributed to different markets. The first Spanish dub was recorded at Proscenius SCL, a dubbing studio that handled the initial translation and voice acting work to to bring the movie to Spanish-speaking audiences throughout Latin America. However, for reasons that are not entirely clear from the production records, the distributors decided that a completely new Spanish dub was needed, leading to a second full dubbing process that was handled by Grupo Macias, another professional dubbing facility. This meant that every single line of dialogue in the entire movie had to be re-recorded with different voice actors, creating an entirely separate Spanish-language version that would sound completely different from the first dub, despite translating the same original English dialogue. This type of double dubbing is extremely rare in the film industry because of the significant additional costs and time involved in creating two complete sets of translated dialogue for the same movie. Dubbing a major action film like Bad Boys requires hiring professional voice actors, translators, sound engineers, and recording facilities, making it a substantial investment that studios typically only undertake once for each target language market. The fact that Bad Boys received this double dubbing treatment suggests that there may have been significant issues with the first Spanish version, whether related to the quality of the voice acting, the accuracy of the translation, or perhaps cultural considerations that made the first dub unsuitable for certain Latin American markets. Different Spanish-speaking countries sometimes have varying preferences for regional dialects, slang usage, or cultural references, which could have motivated the decision to create an alternative version that would be more appropriate for specific audiences. Both Spanish dubs of Bad Boys were ultimately distributed to different markets, meaning that Spanish-speaking viewers in various countries may have experienced completely different voice performances and dialogue interpretations of the same movie, creating two distinct viewing experiences from what was originally a single English-language film. Fact 14. Basketball player's ironic cameo. Former professional basketball player John Salley makes a brief cameo appearance in Bad Boys, but what makes his presence in the movie particularly ironic and amusing is that he was actually a key member of the Detroit Pistons during the late 1980s, when that team was famously known throughout the NBA as the Bad Boys due to their aggressive and physical style of play. This coincidental connection between Sally's basketball career and the movie's title creates a perfect example of life imitating art, or perhaps art accidentally reflecting life. The Detroit Pistons earned their Bad Boys nickname during their championship runs in 1989 and 1990, when they were known for their tough, sometimes dirty defensive tactics and their willingness to physically intimidate opposing teams. Salley was an important part of that team as a power forward and center, contributing to the Pistons' reputation as one of the most feared and aggressive teams in professional basketball during that era. The Bad Boys Pistons were led by players like Isaiah Thomas, Bill Laimbeer, and Dennis Rodman, who were notorious for their hard fouls and psychological warfare against opponents, particularly during playoff games. Salley fit perfectly into this team culture, using his size and athleticism to help the Pistons dominate the paint and intimidate opposing players who dared to drive toward the basket. By the time Bad Boys the movie was being filmed in 1994, Salley had moved on from the Pistons and was playing for other NBA teams, but his connection to the original Bad Boys remained a significant part of his basketball legacy. Whether the casting directors were aware of this connection when they chose Salley for his cameo role is unclear, but the coincidence creates a delightful bit of trivia that connects Hollywood action movies with NBA history. Salley's appearance in the film represents one of those perfect moments where sports and entertainment intersect in unexpected ways, giving basketball fans an additional reason to appreciate his brief screen time while adding an extra layer of meaning to his participation in a movie that shares a name with his former team's famous nickname. Fact 15. Will Smith's love line battle. The final scene of Bad Boys nearly didn't happen the way audiences saw it, because Will Smith absolutely refused to say the line, "I love you, man," to Martin Lawrence, creating a massive standoff with director Michael Bay that consumed half of an entire shooting day and threatened to leave the movie without a proper emotional conclusion. This seemingly simple three-word phrase became the center of an epic battle of wills between the star and director, with both men digging in their heels over what might appear to be a minor piece of dialogue. According to Bay's account of the incident, Smith had initially agreed to deliver the line 3 days before they were scheduled to film the ending, understanding that the director felt it was important for showing the genuine friendship and bond that had developed between the two detective characters throughout their dangerous adventure. However, when the actual filming day arrived, Smith completely changed his mind and announced that he was no longer willing to say those specific words to Lawrence. Bay was determined to get the line because he believed it perfectly captured the emotional heart of the movie and provided the kind of sincere moment that would balance out all the action and comedy that had come before it. The director felt that without this expression of genuine affection between the partners, the movie would be missing a crucial emotional payoff that audiences needed to feel satisfied with the characters' relationship. The argument between Smith and Bay escalated throughout the morning and continued for several hours, with both men refusing to compromise on their positions while the entire cast and crew waited for a resolution. Bay became increasingly frustrated as time passed because he had very limited shooting time remaining and couldn't afford to lose an entire day to this dispute, especially since the ending was such a critical part of the movie. Finally, after hours of heated discussion, and with only about 15 minutes of shooting time left in the day, Bay reached his breaking point and told Smith in complete frustration that he no longer cared what the actor decided to do, since they were rapidly running out of time to film any ending at all. It was only at this moment of ultimate deadline pressure that Smith finally relented and agreed to deliver the line that appears in the finished film.